Hey, welcome everybody to today's remote session. This is Tom Bechtold, your host for today's event. Today we're talking about the attackers have AI. Do you have a program? You really have to have a program these days. You do, because this is serious stuff. It wasn't a fad. We all thought, hey, this is going to be a fad like cloud security, right? Hula hoops, things like that. No, I'm kidding, of course. But this is like serious stuff. You need to have a program in this day and age because there are so many different attack vectors now, and the things have sped up. Welcome, everybody. I want to say thank you for joining us wherever you're at in the world or in the US, excuse me. Thank you to the folks over at CyberMax for making this one possible. We've got a great group of guys that we're going to chat with today. I actually get to kind of take a break. It's kind of nice. I'm going to kick back in the audience with you guys and listen to the presentation this time. And we'll try to formulate some questions from our side and stump the guys if we can, right? So we'll see what we can do. I don't think we're going to be able to stump these guys, though, but we'll give it a shot. But thank you to the folks over at CyberMax. Thanks for the folks in the audience for participating today. If we're asking questions during the course of this, please throw some stuff in the in the chat, the audience chat, if our presenters are asking you stuff. So today's, we've got some slides. I made some very bare bones slides. I know a lot of you out there like to get that for proof of attendance. That's about all it really is worth. There's not going to be a lot of good stuff on the slide because it's just a shell today, because it's really just the guys talking. That's where you're going to get the most value out of this. But grab those if you do need that for proof. You will be able to get the proof of attendance PDF as well after about 45 minutes. I'm recording this thing, so if you like what you're hearing, come back, invite colleagues back. I say this all the time. Some of you are like rolling your eyes already. The bad guys are actually very, very, very good at sharing information, and they're making money off it. We need to collaborate a lot better too, because it actually works. So that being said, that's why I'm saying, please share this webcast with other people that are struggling with AI. This is a new disruptive technology, and I have to believe that most folks don't really have their arms around it very well. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having all of these conversations still. That being said, who are we talking to? We got three great guys. Let me get them on camera here for you guys to take a look at as well. We got Brian Zimmer, Field CISO at CyberMax, Tony Scribner, he's the VP Solution Advisory at Blue Wave, Connor Jackson, Principal Security Researcher at CyberMax. I'm going to turn things over to Mr. Tony Scribner as the moderator for our talk today. And I'm going to disappear into the crowd and throw out some questions for the guys as we go through.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. So as mentioned, my name is Tony Scribner. I'm the Vice President of Solution Advisory with Blue Wave. And if you're not familiar, simply put, Blue Wave is an independent technology advisory and strategic sourcing partner. What we do all day long is just help deliver confidence in complex technology decisions for our customers. Also with us today, Brian. Brian, why don't you give us a little intro of yourself?
Yeah, it's my intro will take about 10 to 15 minutes, so I hope everybody enjoys it. I'm Brian Zimmer. I'm with CyberMax. I'm the field CISO here. What that really means is rather than being solely internally facing, I get the opportunity to get out in the field. That's in the title. Meet with customers and meet with partners, actually like you, Tony, and it's a part of the job that I really enjoy.
Yeah, so that gives you a kind of unique vision, right? You get to see security internally from your own operations, but you get to see it externally and how that's instantiated, which is perfect. Yeah. Also with us today is Connor Jackson. Connor, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure thing, Tony. So as Tony said, my name is Connor Jackson. I'm the principal researcher here at CyberMax. I'm pretty fortunate that I don't get to go out into the field. I get to stay indoors and live in the ones and zeros and be in that convergence between red and blue. So it works perfect for me. Exactly what I want.
Oh, perfect. Well, you're virtually outdoors today, so I think that counts. Tom did a great job introducing us to today's topic. So I don't think we need to take a lot of time before we just jump right in and start the discussion. Obviously, AI is disrupting a lot across the board with IT in all technology areas, really, and that's very prevalent in today's information security and cybersecurity world. So let's start at a little bit of a higher level and kind of dig into this and unpack this. So let's start with kind of the speed and the lower barrier to entry that threat actors are seeing. And I guess my first question for the group and discussion point is really what has changed in the last 12 to 18 months that we're having to deal with to move towards a more resilient rather than a reactive standpoint for cybersecurity. What's making it faster? What's making it cheaper? And I think most importantly, what's making it more accessible to threat actors?
Yeah, Connor, that's all you. Tony, you'll laugh because we went through some of your ideas and we decided that Connor was going to take all of them, and that I was just going to agree with him. So
that's great. That's excellent. I like that.
Yeah. I'm actually going to start things off by pushing a chart for the audience, because this will actually give a little bit of context to some of the points I'm going to make. For additional context, this chart is a history of ransomware attacks measured by quarter. The blue bar is how many attacks per quarter in a 90-day period. The orange line is how many threat actor groups that we were actively tracking during that period. So over the last kind of 3-4 years, we're seeing this slow increase. Now, overlaid over the top with the arrows are every major AI release, every platform, every big update. And what we're seeing is every single time there is a big push to an AI platform, whether it's Claude or DeepSeek or ChatGPT, within 90 days, there's a spike in ransomware and data extortion attacks every single time. So some of the points that I'm going to make are going to tie into this. I just think it's, number one, it's interesting for me to look at, but I think it backs up some points. But the main thing is there's this convergence of different factors that comes around what threat actors are doing. And it all falls under this umbrella of productivity. Threat actors want to get paid, and they want to be more productive. So if they can make more money, they're going to go in that direction. What AI has done at a very high level is it's made things that usually would have taken, say, several days or hours, compressed down into minutes. So you can generate phishing content. You can debug some malware code, or bootstrap another feature onto the back end of it. All these things can now be done in minutes. So it makes threat actors, number one, it doesn't make it more complex, but it makes the barrier to entry much easier. You don't have to be technically sound to just vibe code, your malware to do whatever you want. On top of that, then, this has been around for a number of years. We're all familiar with ransomware as a service. But what's happened in the last 18 months is this huge shift in the ecosystem where everything has now been commoditized. You don't have threat actors that have to breach you, initial access, establish persistence, lateral movement, privilege escalation. Every single stage has now been divided up into people who specialize in that specific area. So what this means is someone who's really good at lateral movement will take someone else's access, move laterally, maybe escalate privileges, and then they'll resell that access. If you don't read Google's M-Trends report, you should. It's one of the best resources that's freely available. And they actually measure dwell time. So in 2022, I'm going to try and quote this off the top of my head now. In 2022, dwell time was around 100 days. Now in 2024, it actually dropped down to 10 days. And you can see where this ties in with AI. The dwell time compressed right the way down to 10 days. Interestingly, last year in 2025, it actually went up, first time in a decade, because of North Korea and their IT worker scam. And they're a huge proponent of using AI attackers. So what's happened now is we're seeing these threat actor groups get faster with each section, and the handoff time is getting even quicker. So for anyone interested, on average, it's taking 22 seconds for one threat actor to give it to another. A couple of years ago, that was measured in hours. We're now down to seconds, which I think is pretty crazy. I've been talking for a few minutes there, so if anyone wants to chime in.
Well, so that's a great answer and a lot to unpack. One of the things I'm kind of wondering is, is it the sophistication of attacks that's increasing? Is it a volumetric, change? Is it a little bit of both? Is a higher volume of good enough attacks what we're seeing, or is it really the sophistication level, or both?
So that's actually a really good point to make. I think you've hit a number of key points. So they're not getting more sophisticated. The way AI models work is they tend to train off of previously done things. So the capable threat actors have always been capable. I've dealt with APT intrusions, and one of the smartest things I ever saw was fileless scheduled tasks. If anyone's interested, post a question in the chat and I'll answer it later. But they've always been good at coming up with novel ways. AI hasn't gotten to that point yet, but it absolutely will, probably in the next 2 years. But what we are seeing is the average attack has gotten better. So all your low-hanging fruit is easy pickings. It always was, but it's much faster now. The average attack has definitely become slightly more complex and greater in scope. So before you might have seen like maybe 100 phishing emails and maybe 2 were good. We're saying like maybe 20 are good today. So the quality is definitely coming up.
So that's great point. I'm gonna have to stop saying great point, because we're gonna get great points throughout.
It's gonna be a lot of them.
Today's event. So I'm gonna try to stop saying that. We talked about the barrier to entry, and I was kind of wondering what that really looks like in practicality. And I think you mentioned it with phishing. We used to get a couple attacks that looked decent, and now we're getting a lot more phishing messages that look very, very realistic, and are harder for people to discern against. Are there other areas? I'm going to throw out the term kill chain, right? And I'm not sure that kill chain is really relevant to conversations anymore, because I think we've kind of broken down that process. But if anyone's unfamiliar, right, the kill chain was a term developed by Lockheed Martin that really breaks down the cyber attack process that we expected threat actors to take, right? So reconnaissance to weaponization and on down the line till finally they were taking actions on their objectives. And that's kind of where you're talking about dwell time. Like that kill chain used to take a bit of time, and as they breached systems, there were times when they were within systems trying to figure out how to get lateral movement and all that. And those 100 days are really now compressed down into minutes. But I want to use kill chain, but maybe it's not appropriate. But where else in, say, reconnaissance or malware development, social engineering, where else are we really seeing that strong reduction in barrier entry for threat actors?
So Connor, before you answer that, because that's definitely a you question, I want to make sure that the audience understands the context here. We've talked about phishing. We've talked about lowering the barrier of entry. We've danced around a couple things. I want to get to a point right here. The identity is the main objective, if you will. And, you think about phishing, you think about smishing, all the different ishings, they are targeting the identity. It's no longer really a remote code execution. Of course there is, but the main point here is that they're targeting identities. So compromises now happen targeting and using valid credentials to get into enterprises, to move laterally, to escalate, and then ultimately to move on action on objectives. I will now be quiet and Connor, let you crush it further.
I mean, you kind of answered the question for me. AI has compressed every point, but there's this huge shift in the industry where identity became your network perimeter. The firewalls and VPNs, that's not the edge of your network anymore. It's your laptop, it's your user's browser. It's how companies have shifted to a SaaS model. Your users interact through their browser now. So if an attacker can get in between your users and your tools, they're going to have as much access as your users have. And if you've got too many privileges associated with specific users, you've just handed the keys to an attacker. What that tends to look like then is, for myself, I come from like an incident response perspective. So that's where my background mainly is. When an attacker hijacks someone else's account, it makes it incredibly difficult because you don't know what normal looks like unless you're in that environment every day. and the logs just show this user logging in. So what we have to do is we have to look historically, and not everyone has 6 months worth of logs to look through. So it creates these unique challenges at the same time because of that, which is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah, and Tony, operationally, I can tell you that is exactly what we see. So we didn't exactly we wanted to provide this as a service to the community and not make this a commercial. So to get everybody caught up, CyberMax is a modern managed detection and response firm. So when Connor and I talk about, what we see and how we operate, we don't want to make assumptions that everybody knows what MDR is, what a SOC is, et cetera, although I think everybody should know what a SOC is. So having set what Connor and I do, I can confirm that what we see are a couple things. We just had an incident where a malicious third party was using just PowerShell and normal commands to move laterally, and we to us and to definitely to our client, it looked like just a normal day on the high seas. But it turns out that user had been compromised sometime before. We were able to go back and do exactly what Connor is talking about. Look at the telemetry, look at the metrics, look at the baselines, and determine, hey, hold on, we have to go back because this is abnormal behavior. This is way outside of the pale of what a normal user, especially this user, would be doing. We declared an incident, and it turned out that that user had been compromised. One last point. Along with that, we at CyberMax have really doubled down on email as an essential attack vector for attackers. Of course, attackers would be using an attack vector. It's a total redundancy. Sorry, everybody. So we, by default, include email security in our core offering. So when you sign up for a CyberMax service, we don't layer on email. We include it into the service. Why? Because attackers are targeting email. Attackers are targeting the user. They're targeting the user via email. So that's why we made the decisions that we made in the face of modern attackers, especially getting back to the point of this entire exercise, especially in the face of attackers that are enabled and driven by AI.
So what I find interesting is we've naturally turned this conversation a little bit towards now the target, right? So the target are obviously companies, enterprises, organizations, whatever, that the threat actors have interest in for whatever reason. And obviously, as Connor said, that is to make money. I have a lot of conversations still that really surprise me with organizations that will say things like, well, we're too small, or we're not heavy into infrastructure, and so we're not really a target, or frankly, we're just not interesting enough for threat actors to pay attention to us. And to people that kind of have that mindset, what are they missing about how attackers can now really do what we've been talking about so far all along, is operate at scale? What are they missing?
Yeah, I think I've struggled with this answer before, but I think now more than ever it's relevant. One of the good pieces of work that Connor does is he really leads our ransomware reporting. And, you can see on the screen some of the data that he produces for us internally and for our clients. But one of the things that we're seeing is, and the data show it, that the attackers have moved to an as-a-service model. And by doing that, everything, and I shouldn't say everything, but this becomes a volume play. So if you target 10 regional hospitals using your as-a-service model, if you target 10 regional waste management firms who are, and this is a real number, taking 2 weeks to even get to alerts, then you're making a volume play, and your ransom demand is going to go down, but via volume, your ultimate payout is going to go up. So I think that line, and I heard it a lot, Tony, to your point, especially years ago, I don't think that defense works anymore. I had a former customer of mine in the food industry that said, I make and bottle fizzy sugared drinks. I don't have the attack codes, the nuclear codes. Well, that didn't apply then, and it definitely doesn't apply now, because then I would turn it around and say, person whose name I won't mention, how do you feel about that now? What does it look for you as the CISO of this organization to not be able to make fizzy, sugary drinks for a month?
Right.
I just want to jump in for 1 second, because Brian hit all of the key points there. You don't need to have data for an attacker to find you profitable. All you need to do is have some level of disruption to the point that it's cheaper to pay them off. So you may not have the keys to nuclear codes, but if your operational costs cost more to have this downtime, you're going to pay them, or they'll think that you're going to pay them. As to Brian's point, you do not need data. You just need to exist at this level.
So that really, I think, talks to the attractiveness of an organization, right? The what's attractive now to a threat actor for an organization has totally changed, and honestly, it's anything that allows them to extort money. Is there anything else that can add to that attractiveness, though? Are we missing something, or is this really just a money play?
Most of it is a money play. There's obviously going to be, outside use cases. They're going to be on the fringe. Most people that are operating in this, it is an industry today. Most people who operate in this industry, the ransomware industry, are just looking to get paid. Some of them will do it because of, ulterior motives, but a lot of them are just looking to get paid.
Okay.
And
I kind of want to keep digging into this, right? Because now we're getting into the economics of it, and we've established that economics is the driver, and ultimately the threat actors are looking to get paid. We talked a lot, or Brian did a lot about identity, right? Now being the major pressure point that they're pushing on. What other kinds of weaknesses are they looking for, or what are they looking to monetize the most? Is there anything else out there?
I know Brian gets asked this a lot, but do you want to tackle this, Brian, or do you want me to jump on this one?
You start.
Okay. I'd like to flip the narrative slightly, because I think this kind of helps people frame things. Particularly when it comes to executives and leaders, they think of hackers as hacking into computers. But if you kind of switch that around and look at it in terms of economics, it helps my brain anyway, see how it works. Attackers looking to get paid, so every time you put a new control in place, it slows down their profitability. And the more you can slow that down, the more attractive your neighbor looks, because they're going to get paid if they go over to him instead. So by slowing down the attacks, we can actually defend ourselves more. It doesn't have to be bulletproof, but it's definitely going to decrease the profitability of an attacker, and time is money.
Yeah. I've always thought in terms of increased cost. And by the way, you're thinking as a defender. Number one, you want to increase cost. You want to create noise, meaning I need to create as many barriers as possible whereby an attacker can expose themselves. So is it hitting a honeypot? Is it hitting a honey token? Is it running a noisy command that is completely outside the norm internally? Again, go back to that incident we just had. So I want to increase time. I want to increase the cost. I want to impose all sorts of constraints, and ultimately buy myself time as that attacker moves I don't want to say through the organization, but as they move vis-a-vis my organization. And I hate that I use that word so much, but I'm going to stand by it.
So you're referring to a lot around defense in depth, right? Or layering of controls to be able to slow down the attack and gain visibility. And so we've made a natural shift now, kind of away from the target and now into the some of the systems and tooling. I mean, we're not that far out of where the traditional detect and response model was kind of what everyone was aspiring to, but that's obviously falling short in today's world. So why is that falling short? Where is that falling short? I think let's start there, and then I'm sure we'll have a whole conversation on tools and building into the program discussion.
Could you refactor your question a little bit?
Yeah. So in essence, why is the traditional detect and response model falling short today?
Mm-hmm. I don't think it takes into account attacker speed. And of course, part of what we're talking about here today is AI. The fact that Connor mentioned some of these reports, I will also use the Verizon data breach report, CrowdStrike's recent excellent report, along with the Google Mandiant report. You're talking about lateral movement in 29 minutes. You've got handoff in 22 seconds, exfil in 4 minutes. These are real numbers, by the way. You can see my head turning because I'm looking at my notes. Dwell time, as Connor said, down to around 14 days. We see those numbers going up, and sometimes persistence at 393 days. Those are real numbers, but I think they show speed. It's not sophistication, although attackers can be sophisticated, but it's speed. We are seeing speed right now and depth and breadth that we have never seen. I think it's fair to say. And I have no idea if I answered your question.
Well,
but I gave a bunch of numbers, and that sounded great.
Yeah. No, I think if I extrapolate what you said, if I have to collect a lot of log data and correlate that and go through and run a rule set against it and start to pick out things I need to alert to the SOC, and the SOC is going to take what used to be maybe an average of 30 minutes to go through an alert and deem it an incident or not. So by the time that has passed, in today's day and age, the damage is already done. Like the old method is just not sustainable with the speed of today's attacks. So that's more or less what I extrapolated from what you said.
That's right. And what is the grease that we use in these gears as attackers? It's vulnerabilities. And Connor and I talked about this for a while yesterday. I would encourage the audience to read everything and anything that Jen Easterly writes, but recently she wrote an article about the KEV program, the known exploitable vulnerabilities. And here's another interesting stat. 26% of KEV vulnerabilities were fully remediated in 2025, and the median remediation time stretched for 43 days. So now take that time, look at it in the face of attacker speed, and tell me we don't have a problem.
We have a problem.
We have a problem.
100%. So we have to address this problem. And I think I still hear a lot when I'm speaking to organizations, there's confusion around tool ownership versus actually having security preparedness or security readiness. Where do people start to really confuse? I have tools, and so therefore I'm prepared, but they're not really prepared.
Connor, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can jump on that. I'll start that by saying I have a gym membership, and it hasn't done me what the sales guy told me it would. So ownership, it doesn't lead to outcomes. Is how I like to think of things. Just because you own a tool, it doesn't mean it's going to do what you were told it's going to do. It's how you implement it. It's your process that you've built, your people that are working around this tool. The tool will just enable you to get to a point of security readiness, but just ownership doesn't immediately imply that.
So you get to see. I would imagine that you get to see through the lens of your customers as you acquire new customers and bring them on board. That maybe a company has invested in tools. They've bought the membership, right? But they're obviously not going to the gym and using it. And for whatever reason, that really rings with me. But anyway, what are some of the warning signs that you see as you acquire customers that maybe they've made a decent investment into tools, but they've really not built any kind of operational program around it? Are there any telltale signs? Is kind of any warning signs that you see or that you can identify?
Yeah, it's a conversation I think probably a lot of our listeners have as well, where you move into a new environment and you need to kind of figure out how things are working. Usually what I find is if you ask a question about, like, can you walk me through an incident, how you would detect, respond, contain, remediate, their response is typically, we have X tool. Like, how do you detect lateral movement? We have X tool. How do you detect whatever? We have X, Y, and Z to do those things. And you end up seeing like dashboards and automatically generated reports, but they're not really being acted on. So that's something that I often see. I refer to it as a shopping list. People think, we check the box, we go through our shopping list, we buy all the tools, and we're ready. It doesn't quite work like that, unfortunately. I wish it did.
Yeah. I have one of my favorite quotes was the guy named Bill Wheeler. He's a bit of an expert in SOAR, and at least back in the day, he did SOAR technologies and would help with run books and instant playbooks, etc. And he was brought in on a project, and they said, "Hey, we want to implement SOAR." And he said, "Fantastic. Show me exactly what Connor talked about. Show me your incident response process. Show me your run books. Show me your escalation procedures, et cetera, et cetera." And they said, we don't have those things." And he then responded, and I'll never forget this, with, "Well, what would you like me to automate and orchestrate?" So they bought a SOAR platform, but they had nothing to orchestrate or automate. The other thing that I see is governance. If your AI is driven by governance or is driven by data, show me your data governance program. 9 times out of 10 not 9 times out of 10, 99 times out of 100 organizations don't have a data governance program. Now talk about identity. Do they have an identity program? Absolutely not. Do they have a corporate governance? Are they following a framework like a NIST or a CIS Top 18 or an ISO 27001 or even 27002? The difference there being the code of practice versus the specification. Those are the things that hold up the technology. And those are the things that organizations don't have. So we bring it all the way back, Tony, to your question. Those are some of those yellow to red flags that we find, especially when Connor and I move to onboard new customers, and we look at it and we say, "Ooh, we've got some coaching to do," and of course, it's our job, it's our responsibility to get our customers caught up, to get them on at least a level footing with the attackers. It's a long answer. I apologize.
Well, we actually have an audience question about tooling, so I'm gonna ask that one real quick of you two. It's specific to blue or red teaming, and the question is, what security tools do you leverage either during blue or red teaming, and what are you seeing at customers the most?
Yeah, I was actually just about to start. If anyone saw me typing, I just began typing out an answer for this. So Matt, this is something I do a lot, so I'm actually kind of glad you asked. I get to talk for things I enjoy. When dealing with blue and red team operations, you're gonna have to tell me to shut up. I'll keep going now till the end of the top of the hour. The most effective tools that you can use right now, specifically when we're talking about identity, are Bloodhound and Azure Hound. Set them up in your environment, run them, don't look at it for a couple of hours, and then come back. It will map out the attack paths that an attacker will take for you. As an aside to that as well, you can see if your tools can detect that. Some of the other tools I like to use are PowerShell Empire and Impacket. And these are just traditional attacker framework tools. These are things that attackers are actively using. If you use them in your own environment, you can see if your SOC or your provider is able to detect them. That will give you a huge amount of input. If you want to do it more externally, there's a number of tools you can use for password spraying. I actually wrote my own called Microsoft Sprinkler, and that will actually tell you which users have MFA as well. And it does it without blocking your accounts. It relies on the error messages. So using those kind of tools, I think that will give you the biggest the biggest return on your investment is Bloodhound and Azure Hound. Find out the attack paths in your network and then work to basically break those paths. The more of those you can break, the less options an attacker will have.
I think we also had a question about your chart. So while you're talking, I think the question was the dip in around Q2 2025. We see a pretty big dip from the quarter prior, and that stays low and it goes back up. Is there some logic behind that, or?
I'm just going to pull it up a bit bigger so I can see exactly where it was. Q2 2025, right?
Correct. It's a little small on my screen, but I believe it says.
Yeah, it's a bit smaller than mine as well, but I'm going to make do. So Q2 2025, I think that's right after Claude 2 launch. So typically what will happen when we see these dips, there's a number of things. Like you're always going to naturally have the ebb and flow of the tide of attacks. Q2 2025, if I remember right, it was actually a very specific instance because the Clop ransomware gang had just launched 1,500 attacks. And anyone who knows Clop will know that they'll spike activity 1 month, do nothing for 4 months, and then they'll spike again. The reason for that is they have a very interesting model. Actually, this is maybe just a bit of information for everyone. If we often see reports where, mass scanning of the internet, mass scanning of specific customer devices, whatever firewall, whatever VPN. A lot of the time, that's actually a threat actor weighing up whether buying an exploit is going to give them a return. They're scanning to see how many endpoints are going to be vulnerable. The Clop ransomware gang do this to an absurd level where it takes them 3 or 4 months to work through the backlog from a single exploit. So what we often see is you'll see a huge spike because the way that the statistics work is I track the dark web pages. So when a threat actor announces they've compromised someone, it gets logged into our database. We have some additional metrics as well. I take it out for brevity, but yeah, it's usually just a case of there will be a drop, but the overall trend is moving upwards.
That does explain that very well. Thank you so much. So I think we're going to kind of take the discussion now and start to really think about what a modern security program should look like today. And what I'm kind of curious from your side, both Brian and Connor, if you were talking to a new customer, a prospect that you wanted to make a customer, and you were assessing whether they had a real security program versus just the collection of tools that we kind of talked about, what would that conversation look like? What would you start to look for first?
Yeah, I would just slightly repeat. I always start with a framework. What's your chosen framework? What do you like? If you have to be CMC compliant, if you have to be PCI compliant, HIPAA, whatever, all the different compliancy frameworks, just pull it back. What are you using as a framework? And don't overthink it. Years ago, I was trained as an ISO guy, and always over rotated to ISO conversations. And finally, somebody pulled me back and said, Zimmer, do you understand how expensive ISO is? It's fine for you in your, Fortune 100 banking and whatever the world is that you're in. But for the rest of us, that's just not a feasible model. And so there are NIST options there. And again, the most simple, especially for our customers who, our ideal customer is anywhere from, 500 to 5,000 endpoints. Of course, we can do more, we can do less, but the CIS Top 18 really, really connects with them, and it gives them a place to start and a place to really rally around to build that program. And then after that, you can build your identity governance, you can build your data governance, and of course, you can build your AI governance. But I think it really all starts with a framework. Because that, ultimately that framework is then going to help you with reporting metrics and providing visualization back to the board, back to your CIO, back to your CEO, et cetera. So I think it all starts with that framework, quite frankly. Not a sexy answer, by the way.
Well, if you're saying that looking at the framework really becomes foundational to the movement, then I think it's a very sexy answer. Are there
accounting for taste?
Yeah. Are there other capabilities or disciplines that you would consider foundational above and beyond that?
What do you think, Connor? I talked for too long there. What do you think?
No, I think you hit all the main points again. Not leaving me much room to move around in. I think one thing that maybe they can do to their program is not necessarily like a hard framework, but it's more of a mindset shift. And that's to basically change your security culture to be in the mindset that you have to change what you're doing. Like just because you spent 6 months of your life building a program doesn't mean that it's going to work in another 6 months. You've got to keep updating it. And this is something that we tend to see a lot. Is these programs took a long time to build, and people almost have like a sunk cost fallacy because their mindset isn't right in today's age. You really have to update that before you can start to implement the tools and the frameworks that Brian mentioned.
Yeah, and there's the updating phase, but then there's also, to speak a language that Connor and I live. If you look at the incident response lifecycle, what's the last step in that process? It's lessons learned. You're writing up your report, you're delivering your report, and you're sitting down together with as few egos as possible. Notice I didn't say with no egos. And you're trying to figure out, what did we do? How do we do better? And the same is true with what Connor is saying. There's that reevaluation phase. And this goes back to what I was saying. I worked for a really good CISO. I've worked for a couple, actually, when I was younger, that really focused on reporting and metrics. And that reporting and those metrics, when you visualize them, they give you an idea. How are we doing? when things become metric based and time bound, then you can really assess where you are with respect to your program and your program build and your program execution. I would say another thing that's completely well, it's not unrelated, but it's a sub bullet of a greater program. One of the things that we are really big advocates of here at CyberMax, and we really encourage our clients to do, is test. And how do you test? You test by harnessing the power of offense. I was with our CEO a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of said inappropriate things. Luckily, it was just a few of us there. And I said, listen, if you are one of those folks that believes that your defender shouldn't be doing offense, meaning pen testing, meaning automated pen testing, what I said in that session was grow up. It's fine to have a third party doing assessments. I think you should do that. But Google's BeyondCorp years ago and the Zero Trust programs years ago said, what is the best way to test your response? What's the best way to test your SOC? Constantly running offensive operations. And that's what we do at CyberMax. We're constantly encouraging our customers to engage us and to engage with us to use our offense to test our defense. We want to be better, and we think that the best way to do that is to test it with offense, to go through the entire process, to do the lessons learned, to understand where we can do better in a metric-based and time-bound way. Now here's my closing thought. The very immature, in my humble opinion, way of thinking about this is the age-old fox watching the hen house. We are not engaged in that. We are trying to get better. We are trying to test our controls. We at CyberMax are a control. We are your security operations center. You have to test us. We have to test ourselves. So I would encourage everybody out there to really integrate offense into your day-to-day operations. Don't just do that external and internal pen test that tests 15 IPs once a year because of compliance reasons. Do it constantly, iterate constantly. All right, I'm done. Connor, get me off stage.
I'm actually going to just quote something that Brian said to me before. It's test for impact, don't test for audit. You want to make sure that the things you're looking for actually have like real metrics behind them. Make sure you can quantify what you're doing, and then you can bring that to the board. So yeah, it's always been good for me.
Did I seriously say that? Test for impact, not test for audit?
Yeah, it's in Teams. Look it up.
That's brilliant. All right, good.
Well, I think that's certainly a lead behind nugget for everyone on the webinar to quote.
It was so good, I wrote it down.
From here forward, and I'm going to use that as well. You really open. So Brian, you opened yourself up before when you started talking about frameworks and compliance. And we've really opened the door for a deeper discussion on some of the dangers that can be wrapped into that. When you think about what some of the frameworks will tell you that you have to do, and we actually have a customer question that I think is going to wrap into this very well. So I'm going to read the question, and then I'm going to kind of finish and launch the answering phase of it, which is most security tools, or to quote verbatim, most AI security tools focus on detecting known AI threats. So the library of vulnerabilities and threats, and we look for matches against that, and that's obviously part of the process. What capabilities should organizations be building today to prepare for AI-enabled attacks that have not yet been identified, right? So we're talking pre-zero day attacks. So I think we can probably build the answer to that into the discussion over the next couple minutes of why that annual assessment and compliance exercise doesn't fit the bill anymore, right? That once a quarter, once every 6 months, or once every 12 months pen test, whatever that assessment was is no longer good enough. And we really have to start working in terms of continuous testing. So how do we start? How do we get there? What are the most valuable ways to test whether controls are working across identity, across endpoint, across our cloud surface, across our network perimeter, and maybe like user behavior and such? How do we start to get to the point where we're doing things, we're actually gaining resiliency now, we're moving away from reaction to resiliency by doing things in a continuous manner? How do we start? How do we get there?
Connor, you
I'll
take
get
the
the ball
first
rolling.
bite. Yep.
I'll challenge that and say, if you did a test a year ago, does your environment look like it did a year ago today? Most organizations, they're looking to grow. There's new users, new updates, software, new devices. Like there's always new in your network, and your annual audit or your review or pen test, that's just a point in time checkbox. It says that you ticked all the boxes on this day, but within a few days, depending on how much your organization changes, that may no longer be true. So continuous testing is incredibly important because, as we've kind of been talking about for the last 50 minutes, AI accelerated attackers are getting faster, so our testing has to be faster as well. And an annual pen test just isn't enough, in my opinion, today. We really need to bring that up. Again, it depends org by org, but continuous testing is a must today.
I think there's another thing that needs to be continuously tested, and Tony, apologies if I'm leading us astray, and that's business logic. There was a really fascinating short article that a colleague of ours, Vijay Haripol, put out. And he said 3 things are so important to defenders. Number 1, the speed asymmetry. Number 2, governance. We already touched on governance. Number 3 is really where I'm going, and that's business logic. And business logic is one of those things that you really have to test, and test often, because that is supported by Connor's point. If you tested a year ago, what does your environment look like? Well, from a business logic perspective, it probably looks drastically different. I'll give you a number to think about. 31% of breaches start with software vulnerabilities. And that number is increasing, which is crazy. Software vulnerabilities have unseated attacks by identities, which is fascinating. So constantly testing the business logic of your systems is really, really key. And so, Tony, I will pause there because I am concerned I might have taken us off a path.
Well, I think that all goes into part of the answer, right? So the direct question, the viewer asked was, how are we building systems that are testing us against things that we don't know yet? And obviously, there is a limit to this sphere of control any company has. Within that sphere of control is certainly their own software and their own systems, right? So whether it's a known vulnerability or not, we need to be continuously testing and probing. And I believe the statement about working on the offensive as well really kind of fits into that entire thing. That's how we protect ourselves against what we don't know yet is coming down the line.
Yep.
So I do believe that all then.
Yeah.
If I could just add one point as well, it's another mentality switch, which is where you move to an assume breach mindset. So assume that, assume the unexpected, assume there's a threat actor in your environment at all times. If you couple that, then I don't know the specifics of your network, but if you're building in-house detections, focus on dynamic TTPs because the behaviors don't change. The static analysis may, but the behavioral identifiers will give you much better grounding. I've caught 0 days, before we even knew about them. We just literally caught them, looked at the PCAPs and the payloads, and before we know it, we were looking at an O day. So assume breach and focus on TTPs and dynamic analysis.
Yep. Yeah, and I think when it comes to this business logic conversation, so as you merge these things together, for those of you not familiar with what we're talking about, if you have run your code through a static or dynamic analysis tool and it's passed, now is not the time to pat yourself on the back. We're talking about the difference between correct, which your SAS tool and your DAS tool are going to identify, and unsafe. Those are two completely separate things. So just because you've passed your SAS and your DAS phase, it doesn't mean that AI empowered and enabled attackers are not going to be able to exploit business logic flaws in your system or systems.
Excellent point. So I know we're starting to wind down on time now, and I want to make sure that we have enough time to leave our viewers with a little bit of homework. So before we assign that homework, I really want to ask each of you, briefly, if you could leave this audience with one message, what would you want them to remember out of this when they think about AI, attackers, and program maturity? Brian, we'll start with you.
Oh, darn it. I was going to kick it to Connor.
No.
Yeah, I can take it if you want.
Yeah, go. You do it.
Okay. I'm going to say that AI hasn't fundamentally changed security, but it has changed the half-life of our assumptions about our security. So AI has gotten so much faster. That's really the biggest takeaway for me, at least, is that attackers with AI are just unbelievably quick compared to what we were looking at 3, 4, 5 years ago. The fundamentals are still the same. They're still doing the same things. They're just using AI to do it faster and more effectively. So when we assume that things are secure because we've got MFA or identity protection or whatever our assumptions are, we need to compress that down and start challenging our own assumptions. Because if a threat actor challenges them first and they're right, you're going to get compromised.
Okay. So now the homework, and again, you both are going to help me assign this homework. And I apologize if my lighting is a little bit off. Of course, like most modern office buildings, our lights turn on and off as we enter and leave the offices. The sensor can't see me where I am, and so it didn't think I was in here and turned my lights off for me. But anyway, what is one practical step this audience can take in the next 30 days to improve readiness, right? So this is the homework for them. This is their take home. What can they do in the next 30 days? What should they do in the next 30 days?
Yeah, I would say engage honestly with a firm that does offense well, and that firm should lead you through a tabletop exercise for both your technical staff and your executive staff in what a breach looks like. And that breach, and watch how I tie this all together, should include attacks on business logic. So I gave you 3 nuggets of homework for 1. Look at me.
Full circle. Excellent. Well, I certainly appreciate that. And I think that brings us towards the conclusion of our time together. Tom, I wanted to throw it back to you to see if you had any house cleaning for the group.
I do. Thanks, Brian, for the generous helping of homework. That was kind of you. I think the audience members are going to appreciate it. No, seriously, good stuff, guys. Thank you for joining me today. I think you guys covered a lot of good stuff, stuff people need to hear about. Those tools that Connor threw out were awesome. I was kind of like Googling them as you were like throwing them out there for the people. That's awesome. Good job, everybody. Out there in the audience, if you haven't already, grab your certificate of attendance. You can grab this, like I said at the beginning, the slides are in there as well if you want some kind of proof, but they're just stuff I made. It's not from the guys, really. You're going to want to download the ebook that we have from CyberMax. It's in the resources, though. There's good stuff in there. Keep those the hands coming. I love seeing that stuff as you guys are kind of grabbing the stuff from the resources. I love seeing the animated stuff when people actually like the sessions. Thank you, Brian, Tony, and Connor for being here today. Thank you, CyberMax, for making this one possible. We've got more stuff on the way. We always do. I've got another one next week on Thursday, the AI and human risk landscape, securing collaboration in the age of AI. So we're going to figure out what that one's all about. We've also got coming up in August, we've got a NIST course. This one's actually a paid online course. This is with Kip Boyle out of our Seattle area. He does a wonderful job on these. You're going to want to take a look at it. It's pretty affordable, and you're going to come out of that knowing a lot more than you did going in. I'll tell you that for sure. I'm bringing back Ask a Lawyer. That's coming in end of August. So we're going to bring the ladies back. We've got a great group of cyber attorneys. We're going to go through privacy and AI law and other things coming out. When you register for that, throw in questions, because I always pull the questions out and I share those ahead of time with the group, and then that's how we develop those. So please share that information. And I didn't put it on any of the slides, but tomorrow is our big AI conference virtually. If you haven't signed up for that one already, you should go to secureworld.io. I forgot to put a link in for that one. I just assumed everybody had already signed up for it. But it is happening tomorrow. So you want to check that out. Grab your CPEs, check out CyberMax, and we'll see everybody at the next remote session. Be well, everybody. Take care.